Welcome to the Here's Waldo podcast, where we sit down with top visionaries and creatives in the video game industry. Together, we'll unravel their journeys and learn more about the path they're forging ahead. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi, I'm Lizzie Mintis. I am the founder and CEO of Here's Waldo Recruiting, and this is the Here's Waldo podcast. In every episode, we dive deep into conversations with creatives, founders, and execs about their journey. You can expect to hear valuable lessons and get a glimpse into the future of the industry. This episode is brought to you by Here's Waldo Recruiting. We are a boutique recruitment firm that focuses on games and tech and values quality over quantity, transparency, communication, and diversity. Before introducing today's guest, I want to give a thank you to Amir Satvat, the hero of the video game industry and his community. That's how Zoe and I ended up connecting.
Yeah.
If you know anybody looking for a job with questions about the industry, have them look at Amir's community. It's amazing. There's every resource there. Today we have Zoe Curnoe with us. Zoe is a 20-year veteran of the video game industry and founder. She has worked as a production and operations leader at studios like Electronic Arts, Riot Games, The Coalition, which is an Xbox studio, and she was most recently co-founder of Timbre Games. In 2024, she started Lumina Leadership, which is a boutique executive leadership coaching and training firm. Let's begin. I'm glad we can make this work. Thanks, Zoe.
Yeah, I'm so excited we finally get to talk.
Can you please share a little bit more about what Lumina Leadership is?
Yeah, so maybe I'll go back and talk about just where coaching entered my life, which was in around 2010-ish. I was working at EA and someone mentioned to me, "Do you have a coach?" And I was like, "Oh, what's that?" I didn't even know. I think I knew the term. I think a lot of people think like, "Oh, it's Tony Robbins," right? And they're kind of like, "Ooh." Or they're excited about it. They're like, "Are you going to make me do power poses?" And so I got a coach back then, Susan Washington. Shout out to Susan. And I think that is actually what hooked me. Like I was like, "Oh, I would love to do this for other people." And so then as a leader, I started bringing it into my day to day. And when I had direct reports and really changing from being that manager that tells everyone what to do, which is often what you think when you become a manager, to actually coaching people to sort of open their toolboxes and be like, "Oh, I have this inside me, to figure this out." And so just all throughout the years, I've always had a coach on and off. And then during the pandemic, I think for a lot of us, we went work from home and it just gave you all this extra time because you weren't socializing. I think I learned to knit during the pandemic as well. And I went, "Oh, I'm finally going to get actual training in this. So I'm going to go to a recognized school and get the amount of hours that is actually going to train me to be a coach." And so I went to CTI, the Coaches Training Institute, and they do a specific style of coaching that's called coactive coaching, which really spoke to me. And so I did that over 6 months while I was still at the coalition. And taking that course, like I was chuckling to myself a little bit thinking about this, which was I was really selling it to myself, like this is going to make me a better leader at the coalition.
Yeah.
But I think it really inside, it was pushing me to go and do the thing I really wanted to do, which was I still love making video games. I don't think I'll ever stop. I still consult and advise in that space. But it was like every day coaching people and helping them be better leaders is what I love. It's really what I love doing. And like I'm energized by it. And so we had already shipped Gears 5 by then. We shipped DLC while I was working on that finishing those hours in the training. And so then we started Timbre. I did that for 2 years. And then I'm 53. So I was heading into my mid 50s and was like, I think the next phase, I'm ready for it. Like it's time, it's time to do this. And I think also just with this year, I know a lot of people said to me, "Are you really starting a business this year, like in 2024?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am, because we need it. Like these leaders need support." And I see a lot of them struggling and suffering kind of in silence and thinking that they have to go through it alone and they have to make those hard decisions alone. And I want to be their partner and help them through it and help them be brave and courageous in such a scary time.
It is a scary time and needed more than
Yeah.
ever. And many of the top businesses start in a downturn, so it's always
Right,
easy to start a
exactly.
business no matter
Yeah,
what.
yeah, of course. I always used to joke, when you hire all these people at these really large companies, you're kind of just training them to go and run their own companies anyways. So that's
Yeah,
okay,
I
right?
think it's training. So you
Yeah.
said that the coaching program you did was coactive leadership. What is
Um,
like about this?
yeah. Yeah, the school is called the Coaches Training Institute, so CTI. They do a coactive leadership program. I actually haven't taken that, but I took just their coactive coaching training program, which was directed, it's changed a little bit now, but when I took it, it was a little bit more directed towards life coaching, which is helping people transform kind of in their daily lives. But the style of coaching works for anyone. And it's been around for a very, very long time. And it's part of why I took that program. And there's always a joke with their, like, when you meet a coactive coach, you kind of know because they're a little bit different. And one of the things that they say is you're always dancing in the moment with your client. And so your client is kind of going through something and you have to sort of meet them there and help pull them through that moment rather than directive and kind of advising them as to what's happening, but you're really listening for those things of where they're at. You're helping pull them through that experience. Yeah.
I like that, more of a partnership opposed to.
Yeah. I've described it as a co-pilot.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, everybody needs a co-pilot.
Yeah.
I remember being at this conference and there was this guy who owned most of the Verizon stores, just the super,
Right.
what's the word, like energetic, kind of just you want to be around him guy,
Yeah.
in his eyes. And then he had brought his coach on and he was talking about his coach. And I had also never thought about having a coach. And
Right. Yeah.
it was just not ever something that had occurred to me. So, okay. And
Yeah.
are you coaching a specific type of, are you coaching a studio leader? Are you coaching a technical leader? Are you coaching a mid-level
All
mid?
of the above. Yeah,
Okay.
all of the above. I think, right now, most of my individual clients are in the more like lead senior manager sort of principal space, heading a little higher. I have a couple of studio founders as well, was very experienced in the industry, but really starting as entrepreneurs for the first time. But what I really love to do the most is actually to partner with an organization and offer coaching and leadership coaching to a larger group of leaders within that organization, because you often can help enact more change and more cultural impact at that leadership level when you have more than just one person in an organization. So I
Yeah.
love coaching individuals. I will always just reserve time in my calendar for it. I'm excited. I have some new people that I'm kicking off next week. And I was looking at it today and was like, oh, I'm so excited to figure out what's happening. So I think those are really exciting and I always need to make time for it. But I really do think that at that organizational level is where you can really have that impact where you can, excuse me, I'm going to take a drink of water.
That makes sense. And does, what has your coaching experience been? You said you started out with a coach and now
Yeah.
with this coaching leadership program, but what are the different sorts of coaches in your
Yeah.
experience and how do you know who's right for you?
That is a great question. I remember actually when we first started talking about this at the Games Beat Summit, you were like, "Oh yeah, I have a business coach, and when I have this, and it is really important to find those coaches that speak to you. Their style of coaching works for you as well." I'm on my third coach that I've had in for how long? In 15 years. And my current coach, I met her. She was one of my instructors at CTI in my training. And I just really liked her style. I think there is an affinity there for me because she's Dutch, actually. And I find that she's very direct in a very caring and empathetic way. And I need that. Um, I know that I'm a little slippery and I can get away with things with people. I can convince them that maybe that thing they think isn't the thing. I know
Yeah.
that about myself. I'm very
Yeah, they just
self-aware.
want to call you on it.
Yeah. And she'll just be like,
Yeah.
oh, And so I kind of knew that would be a good connection. And so, and then the other coach I've had in between was someone that actually my manager, Christy Ray at the coalition, hired for me to help me work through some struggles I was having as a leader as I was moving up in the organization. Her name was Jennifer Pascoe, and she really ignited the fire in me of pursuing coaching. She'd been coaching leaders at Xbox for years, and she just had this way about her of really kind of like, I'm not going to say pushing, but like motivating you in a way to move through the problems you were facing and really visualizing what kind of leader do you want to be. If people are walking down the hallway at the studio, what do you want them to be saying about you? And so she really got me to start thinking about that, and then the behaviors and actions that would lead to the positive outcomes that I was looking for. Yeah.
I like that, being intentional.
Yeah. And then you asked how to find a coach.
Yes.
It's actually a little bit challenging to find them, but there are a lot on LinkedIn. So you can just, do one of those searches for like executive coach. And people get confused by the term executive coach. It doesn't mean you only coach executives. It means that you're coaching people kind of in that leadership space. It's all encompassing. So just remember that. And also is to interview them, literally try them out. I tried out, even though I knew I wanted the coach I have right now because she had been my instructor, I interviewed 3 coaches before I picked her. And often they'll do a free 30 or 45-minute session with you. If you want them to do some coaching, you can ask them for that, and you can sort of see if it fits with what you're looking for and how it works for you. And sometimes, you have to be a little bit careful. I would also look at their training or look at their experience. Are they from the field that you're in? I don't think they always have to be. There's a very divisive opinion in the coaching community that anyone can coach anyone. I don't totally believe that. I think that having some understanding of a person's background and industry helps. My coach doesn't come from games, but she has an extensive background in operational management. And so it had a lot of crossover for me. So sometimes when I talk about things, I don't have to explain too much because we can get into it very quickly. And I find that quite helpful. And I do find lately people I've been talking to, certainly in the HR or actually talent space, who are helping look for coaches for organizations, they say, "Oh, I'm so glad to talk to you. There's so few coaches with gaming experience."
Oh, yeah,
And so, yeah, there's not a lot of us right now. I've been lately meeting more and more people, and I'm hoping there is more of them. And, my goal with Lumina, I'm hoping, is to, become a boutique coaching firm that has multiple coaches who we can deploy out in groups to companies as well, to give people some choice as to who their coach is. And then create multiple programs and help multiple studios at once, which my capacity is limited now by my time. And so, I can't deal with too many studios at once. I just don't have the capacity to coach that many people. But that's my dream and goal for Lumina, is that we can have more of an impact in this industry and help it through, honestly, one of the hardest times it's ever been through right now. So, yeah.
It is a very hard time. It's hard to go on LinkedIn these days, but that's amazing work. How do you feel like game industry coaching specifically is going to be different than traditional coaching?
That's a good question. Yeah. So I think in that space, I think just having an understanding of how challenging those different disciplines are when they try to collaborate, it's so hard because different personalities as well, and that's common in the work world, but those different disciplines and combining creative with technology, it's just the hardest thing in the world. It's really, really challenging. And then of course, the costs as well as they go up, and as just looking at what that looks like, maybe you're working remotely, but then trying to collaborate across cultures, countries, technologies, and then you add in all the things that most people deal with. It's really, really difficult. And I think having a core understanding of that is really helpful for people to help give them some new tools to work with, and different perspectives.
And empathize and understand. Yeah, you're right. So much cross
Yeah.
collaboration, very different
Yeah.
things, types,
Yeah.
cultures, beliefs. Yeah.
Yeah, like in film and television, not VFX, but film and television, you're out there, you're shooting your movie, you're editing it. There's technology, but it's not holding you up or preventing you from progressing,
Right.
or there isn't someone on the technology side that has their own goals and agenda that might not fit with the creative side. And that stuff comes up in games all the time. And so how to navigate those things, it's incredibly complex and can be incredibly stressful as well. So yeah.
What are some of the common problems that you see game leaders facing? There's so many, but you know,
Totally. I'm like,
I mean, are there
hmm.
pockets that you would put them in? The
Yeah.
most
Like
common.
what's recurring kind of right now
I'm sure
in
there's
this space?
themes right now that
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I mean, the biggest one is sustainability. Like, how do I save my business?
yes.
Which is kind of heartbreaking, but that is the biggest one. Like, what do I do right now to make sure I can pay people tomorrow? And what am I doing in the next year to make sure my business still exists? And how am I going to navigate this in a way that is human and empathetic, but also that this business survives so the rest of the people here still have jobs as well? And it is such a conflicting, challenging thing to go through. That's the biggest one, I think, right now. Certainly, the political climate in the US is a big topic right now. In Canada, it is because US is our biggest trading partner. So there's things there that are going to affect us. A lot of people are talking about that right now. And then the big one for individuals, I'm going to say that's like at the studio leadership level, say for like the one layer down from that, our people are just really unstable right now. And they've kind of, I'm going to say, run out of steam is what I'm thinking, like the word that's coming to mind. The pandemic was hard enough and it piled on top of everyone. And then we came out of it and affordability got really difficult and inflation. And then that seemed to get better. And then the downturn happened. And so I think people are a little worn out, a little bit tired, and a little bit frustrated. And so it seems like there's almost more conflict happening than even used to because people are just more on edge,
Yeah, I would
you
say there's
know?
factors that
Yeah.
on edge right now. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
right. And it's like it keeps piling on. And so then you're like, resilience. I don't want a training session on resilience. Like, I've been dealing with resilience for 5 years. Like, right.
Yeah.
And so it's changing the language, I think, around some of that.
I think people are also probably feeling stuck, right? They're stuck at their company.
It's
They don't have
absolutely.
options and they're making
Yes.
a choice between bad and worse, which is
Yes. Or
not,
being unemployed.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
themselves.
Whereas, in the past, I think in games, we've all done this. You could be like, I'm not happy at work. I'm going to take a few months off. I'm going to quit my job. I don't have another job. I'll find one. That is not the case right now, right? You may not find one for a year or more. And
Am I-
so it's not that same flexibility. Yeah. And so it's really helping people navigate that and maybe have slightly harder conversations with their managers and leaders and saying, how do we figure this out together? How do we help each other through this instead of just tapping out and leaving, but
Yeah,
really enacting some of that change inside the organization?
and it's really hard.
It is very hard. Yeah, absolutely. I think it can be done though. I have hope.
Yeah. Someone told me yesterday, you're never as good as you think you are when things are going really well, and you're never as bad as you think you are when things are going horribly. And I thought that was profound.
That's
One thing,
interesting.
when things are going well, you're like, yeah, I got this. I'm doing
Yeah, you're
well.
like, I'm indispensable.
Totally. And then when it's bad,
Yeah.
everyone feels so bad about themselves because
Yeah. They're
they
like,
did
I'm to blame for everything. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great example. Like I'm like, oh, I'd love to coach that person
it.
because being self-aware, right? And knowing what place you play in that grander scheme of your studio, your project, your company is so important. And it kind of feeds back into the vision stuff too. Like something I also love doing is helping those leaders be like, well, what is your company vision? And what are the values that you're using to make decisions right now? And does everyone at your company know what that is on your team, on your project? because often when we're in these stages of crisis, we kind of forget to do the housekeeping, like the leadership housekeeping. It's like, everyone's got to clean the toilet once a week. Like you got to do that. So, don't let those things drop because you're in crisis. And I know that's so hard for a leader to hear because they're like, seriously, I have to do more than I'm already doing. I'm going to say you don't have to do more. I think you have to just do it a bit smarter and a bit more strategic and really look at those priorities of like, okay, what am I doing right now? Does everyone know where we're going? Does everyone know what's happening? And is that
Yes.
super clear?
Yes. So much the answer is no. And it is more
Yeah,
work, but then eventually it is less work. I have this conversation
absolutely.
with people
Yeah,
hiring.
yeah,
Yeah, you have to define your values and what you're looking for,
yeah.
what you want, and your team has to be aligned, and you need to make a concrete process. And if you don't, you can do it without, but you're not going to get the
Well,
same.
your
It's
work
going to take
will
you a
be
lot more time.
harder, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you actually will have less time and you'll
Yeah.
be more stressed. Your team will be stressed. And then no one is working as efficiently as they should be because what starts to happen is they fill in the blanks. And then the gossip starts. And then the toxicity leaks out. And then everyone will start making decisions or moving forward in ways that are maybe not what you want.
Not in alignment. Yeah.
No, yeah. And then you're like, oh no, I have to course correct. Oh my gosh, I've just spent all week course correcting this thing. When if those things had been established from the beginning and you were doing little health checks all the way along, it really frees up your time. Yeah. Being that forward looking leader is so important. It's like near term, far term, near term, far term, and you're always doing that thing. And that's a skill. It's a muscle that you
Yeah.
have to keep using or it will atrophy. I've never thought of that metaphor before, but I like it.
It's harder when the short term is on fire, though.
Yes, yes, yeah, yes,
So
absolutely.
I imagine a lot of your coaching is about helping people be self-aware and helping people understand
Yeah,
their blind spots and what they don't know and what they can work on in a way that maybe they can discover it themselves, right?
yes.
To this eureka moment. Um,
Yeah.
Give an example, either personally or through your work, about a time a blind spot led to a better outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I have a very vulnerable one I'll share for you from Xbox, but I put it in talks that I give and I talk about it a lot because I feel that being vulnerable as a leader and admitting when you get something really wrong is really important.
Yes.
So it's actually when my manager at Xbox actually got me a coach because she was like, "You need a coach to help you through this." And that was, I'll just talk about that for 1 second, which that for me was a really eye-opening moment of like, oh, you're an incredibly experienced manager. And you know that you need to bring in an expert, like a coach to help me with this thing. You don't think that you can solve all of the things your direct reports have. That was like light bulb moment. But it was because at the end of Gears of War 4, so I was the production director for the campaign on that project. And at the end of it, there was, review process, 360 process. And I found out that some of my key peers, two of them who I had an immense amount of respect for and considered my friends, didn't trust me anymore. Because at the end of Gears 4, I was so burnt out. And during the finaling of that project, I was so singly focused on shipping that game that I was in this complete state of burnout and I didn't even know. And when you're in that state of burnout and you don't feel supported, you lash out at people and you start blaming people for where you are. And you get that there's cycles of burnout, which is, you're tired and you kind of become cynical. At the very bottom of that burnout cycle, you become very like blamey is the word I guess I can think of towards other people rather than seeing what you're contributing to the situation yourself. And then you're in fight and flight 100% of the time. And that had happened to me, and I was still there, and I didn't even know I was still there. So we were in pre-production on Gears 5, and I hadn't come out of it. But to get that feedback, I remember the day we had the conversation, I drove home and I cried, and I was angry, and I was like, "What? What's happening? This is terrible." And then it's like, "That's just not who I am." And then I sat there and sat in it, in my stuff, and was like, wow, I need to change. This is terrible. It's not who I am. And I knew that wasn't who I was as a leader. It's just never been me. But for that period of time, that's who I'd become. Yeah. And that's when I met Jennifer Pascoe, and she was phenomenal. Yeah.
So did you get the feedback and then did your manager deliver the feedback to you? Or
Yes, in that
okay.
situation. Yeah. Yeah. In that situation, the 360 was done with my manager as a part of a review process. And then Jennifer and I worked on it together. And so we kicked it off with her. Like I shared my review with her and we went over it and talked about it. So she really pulled out of me like, well, when does this behavior happen? Like, what are your triggers? We worked for a long time on values and got really clear on what my values are. And she started to show me that those moments of distress that I was experiencing, that behavior was coming out, were when I felt that my values were being threatened. And so when there was this values mismatch, then I was being extra hard on people because I was blaming them for them not honoring my values, even though it wasn't that person, it was the situation. And being really clear on your own personal values is so important in life. And so many people just never have that conversation. And I
Yeah.
think at that point in my life, I assumed that I really knew what they were. I had done some previous work in that space, but I wasn't really clear on how they were affecting my day to day. Yeah,
I mean, it helps you with work, but also with life. It's a lot like parenting is just
absolutely.
like you have
Parenting for sure. Yeah.
action. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it helps you make decisions, right? It helps you in your relationships with your partner, with your friends. It's incredibly important thing to explore. Yeah.
thank you for your vulnerable story and sharing.
Yeah.
Congrats on being open to a coach, working with a coach, becoming a coach.
I still work on that stuff every day. I still have to be aware that that's where I go when I'm tired, burnt out, and stressed. Yeah.
And if you are your manager in that case and you are delivering feedback which you think may be a surprise or
Yeah.
it's going to be rough on somebody, do you have any coaching insight on how you can deliver
Yeah.
that way where you're
Absolutely.
clear and kind but also honest?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back really to the exactly what you just said, which is clear and kind. So you start from that place of there's something we need to discuss, but it might be hard to hear. I think acknowledging that and talking through it even before you start, because you also have to make sure the person is ready to receive it. Because if they aren't, you don't know what's happened that day. You don't know what's happened in their personal life. I mean, you have to have the conversation, but make sure that they're open to it in that moment. And I actually encourage people to practice if they are a little unsure or challenged or nervous about giving difficult feedback, is to practice a little bit. Write down some words, think about how you want to say it. And I'm a big believer of the model of be very clear about the behaviors, how they impact other people, how you would like it to change in the future, and how it will help them in their career and their collaboration and their teamwork. So they understand that, like, it's this, it's like physics, it's like the action, the result, and then the resulting action, and how that will change their day to day and help them moving forward. Yeah, it kind of comes back to the radical candor movement, I'm going to say. And I know some people kind of wince at it because of some people will go in the like super direct space, like I can't remember what Kim Scott calls it, but it's like the something asshole one where it's like
Yeah.
you're right. And then, but most common is the ruinous empathy side. Whereas you think not giving feedback to someone is actually being empathetic when it's the absolute worst thing you can do. And people can go for years with not being given any feedback at all about their behaviors and actions and work. And then they never improve and they never grow. And that's just not how humans are built. Like we naturally want to learn things and grow and progress in life.
Yeah, and you do want to know where you can improve, right? You just have to
Yeah.
space to hear it. So would you just ask them, like, if, let's say you have a one-on-one scheduled, do you just ask them, I have some feedback I want to discuss?
Yeah.
what's your word track there? Like, is
Yeah.
now an okay time, or would you like to schedule this for another time?
Absolutely. That's exactly what I would say. Like, I would say, hey, I can give it to you today. I'd love to talk through it with you, and I want to help you progress through it. And that's a really big one, is them knowing that you are there to help them. You're not just there to deliver the feedback. Be like, here's my feedback. See ya, deal with
And I'm just
it.
like, yeah, you're not the
Yeah.
HR.
Which I have talked to managers that do that because they don't know how to help. And so they're like, well, my job is to deliver the feedback. It's like your job is to walk beside this person and help them.
Yeah, that
And
goes back to your coaching training and your style of coaching.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And if you don't have the skill to help them, then you bring in someone who can. And you may not, and that's fine. And that's what coaches are for. That's what we come in and help you with.
Yeah.
And yeah, but absolutely back to what you were saying, like, is say, I have some feedback for you, I'm here to help you through it. To let me know, like, is today the right day to have this conversation? Would you like to schedule it for a different day? Some people want it right away because they will stew,
Yes.
right? They'll ruminate until you have that conversation. Or some people will go, yeah, not today, actually, but I'd love to talk to you tomorrow or another day about it. Don't let it go very long, but you do have to check in with people. Let's think about relationships, like a romantic relationship. If you had to have a hard conversation with your partner, would you just dive into it, or would you be like, can we set aside some time to talk about this thing that's been bothering me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the specification too, right? That's great. I have one last question before I ask.
Yeah.
I want to point people to your website, lumina-leadership.com.
Yeah.
The last question, who has your biggest mentor or coach been, and what is
Yeah.
some advice that they've given you that has stuck?
I'm going to give a shout out to Barry Hawkins. So Barry was my onboarding buddy when I was at Riot Games. He interviewed me as well. I'll never forget my first day I met him. I got up to the floor where I was supposed to sit, and I was looking around. They were like, find your onboarding buddy. And I look over, and Barry is standing at my desk with like his arms in the air, like he just finished like a gymnastics routine. It was incredibly funny, and it was a very nice way to be introduced. But he is the very first person in my career who taught me how to use agile methodologies in a way that actually worked. And I learned so much from him at Riot. And through him, I got to work with the player behavior team there, who worked on creating healthy player communities inside League of Legends. I met some amazing people there through that. And then after we both left Riot, he has stayed a constant in my life. And I can just talk to him about anything, like life and work. And he always has a different perspective for me in a way that is not telling me what to do or anything like that, but is helping me see things that I maybe can't see, but from a place of great experience and expertise that really helps me kind of work through things in a way that is super caring and empathetic as well. And yeah, it's been great having him be a part of my life, and just, yeah, learning and having him alongside me. And he's always cheerleading as well. Like, he's always like, yeah, go do it. And then sometimes when I'm talking to him, he will just kind of cut through the noise and just say, I hear what you're saying, but I know you, and I know that you love this thing, and I'm surprised you're not doing that thing that you love. And it will be like, oh, whoa, okay, I hadn't thought about that. And I think we always need those people in our lives who can cut through the noise. Yeah.
And you like that, especially that's your feedback style you like to receive.
Yeah, but it's still a very caring and empathetic way, but it's very clear, and it just like quiets the noise that's going on in there. Yeah.
And you build that trust. Congrats on finding your
Yeah.
person. I mean, what
Yeah.
serendipity to have him be your onboarding buddy.
Yeah, it was very funny. I mean, he was very senior at Riot at the time. In his view, I've never asked him this, but I think when he interviewed me, he was like, I'm going to grab onto that one and see if I can mentor her in this situation. And he did. And I'm very grateful that he was there as my support. Yeah.
And now you get to give it back. So you come full
Yeah,
circle.
exactly.
We've been talking to Zoe Curnoe, who's the founder of Lumina Leadership. Zoe, where can people go to hire you to be their coach or
Yeah.
box or just
The
learn?
best place is LinkedIn. I love posting on LinkedIn. I just write about what I'm thinking about that day or about leadership or little hints and tips and things. And you can actually book a little discovery session with me on there just from the little link that's on LinkedIn. But that's kind of where I hang out. I'm not on Twitter anymore. I am also on Blue Sky, but I never remember the whole Blue Sky thing. But I'm Amazoe in most online spaces. Amazoe, and then just my name, Zoe Curnoe, on LinkedIn. I'd love to chat with people about how I can help them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the show this week. To catch all the latest from Here's Waldo, you can follow us on LinkedIn. Be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes. We'll see you next time.